Recent events have put Venezuela back in the headlines, but this video isn't about politics. This is about something far more terrifying and far more relevant to every single person watching. Because what happened in that country over the past decade is a masterclass in how money dies when trust disappears. And before you think this could never happen where you live, remember this. In 2012, Venezuela had the largest oil reserves on Earth, a thriving middle class, and a currency people actually believed in. 13 years later, their money became so worthless that people were literally weighing cash instead of counting it. So hit that subscribe button right now, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how a currency collapses, what happens to your wealth when it does, and most importantly, how to protect yourself before it's too late. Let's start with something most people completely misunderstand. When we talk about trust in finance, we're not talking about warm, fuzzy feelings or blind faith in government promises. We're talking about something cold, mathematical, and absolutely fundamental to how money works. Trust in finance means three specific things. First, that the currency you hold today will buy roughly the same amount of goods tomorrow. Second, that the institutions holding your money won't simply vanish or lock you out. And third, that the rules of the game won't change overnight in ways that destroy your wealth. These three pillars hold up every financial system on Earth, and when they start cracking, the entire structure comes down fast. Think about the dollar in your wallet or the money in your bank account. Why does it have value? Not because of the paper it's printed on, not because some authority declared it valuable. It has value because millions of people agree it has value. Because you trust that when you go to the grocery store tomorrow, they'll accept it. Because you trust that your employer will pay you in it. Because you trust that other people will trust it. This is called the network effect of currency. Money is the ultimate collective agreement. The moment that agreement starts breaking down, you don't just get economic problems. You get an economic death spiral. Here's how that death spiral typically starts. It usually begins with government overspending. A country spends more than it collects in taxes. That's not automatically catastrophic. Lots of countries run deficits. But when those deficits become massive and chronic, governments face a choice. They can cut spending, which is politically painful. They can raise taxes, which is also politically painful. Or they can do something that feels painless in the short term, but is absolutely devastating in the long term. They can print money. And this is where the trust starts cracking. When a government starts printing currency to pay its bills, the first effect is subtle. There's a bit more money floating around. Prices start edging up. Inflation goes from 3% to 5%, then to 10%. At first, people don't panic. They've seen inflation before. Maybe they ask for raises. Maybe they adjust their budgets. Life goes on. But here's the critical threshold. Once inflation crosses into the 20%, 30%, 40% range, something psychological shifts. People stop trusting that their currency will hold value. And that's when the real nightmare begins. In Venezuela's case, the inflation numbers tell a story of complete monetary collapse. In 2012, inflation was around 20%. Concerning, but manageable. By 2014, it hit 69%, the highest in the world. By 2016, it reached 800%. By 2017, over 4,000%. And by 2018, the International Monetary Fund estimated Venezuela's inflation rate at 1,700,000%. Not a typo. 1.7 million%. To put that in perspective, if you had 100,000 bolivars in January 2018, by December, it would buy you roughly what 6 bolivars bought at the start of the year. Your savings didn't just decline, they evaporated. They ceased to exist in any meaningful sense. But raw inflation numbers don't capture the human reality of what this means. Let me paint you the actual picture. By 2018, prices in Venezuela were doubling every 19 days. Think about that. Every 19 days, everything cost twice as much. A loaf of bread that cost 10 bolivars on Monday would cost 20 bolivars 3 weeks later. This creates behavior that sounds insane to anyone living in a stable economy. People would get paid and immediately sprint to the store to buy anything at all, because they knew that by next week, their money would buy half as much. Store employees would literally change price tags multiple times per day. Some stores stopped using price tags entirely. You had to ask staff how much things cost because the prices were changing by the hour. Savings accounts became death traps. Imagine you spent 20 years carefully saving money. You were responsible. You built up what you thought was a nice cushion. Maybe 500,000 bolivars. Enough for emergencies, enough for retirement, enough to feel secure. And then, in the span of 18 months, that entire life savings became worth less than a meal at McDonald's. This actually happened to millions of people. Their entire life's work erased, not because they made bad investments, not because they were reckless, simply because they trusted that their currency would hold value. And here's what makes this so devastating from a wealth perspective. When people talk about net worth, they usually think about their assets, their house, their car, their savings, their investments. But in a currency collapse, you discover a brutal truth. Most of your wealth isn't actually wealth. It's denominated wealth. It's numbers in a system that only has value as long as everyone agrees it has value. Your house might still be standing. Your car might still run. But if the currency those assets are priced in becomes worthless, your net worth can drop 90%, 95%, 99%, even while you technically still own everything. Let's look at what happened to different types of assets during Venezuela's collapse, because this is where the finance lessons get really important. Real estate, which Americans often view as the ultimate store of value, became incredibly complicated. On paper, Venezuelan property prices actually went up when measured in bolivars. A house that cost 10 million bolivars might later sell for 500 million bolivars. Sounds like a massive gain, right? Wrong. When you adjusted for inflation, that property lost enormous real value. But here's the twist. Property did better than cash. If you had 10 million bolivars in the bank, it became worthless. If you had a 10 million bolivar house, you at least still had a house. This is why, in inflationary collapses, we often see property prices that look inflated in nominal terms, but are actually crashing in real terms. Salaries became a sick joke. Imagine your employer tells you you're getting a 50% raise. Sounds amazing, but when inflation is running at 1,000%, that 50% raise means you're actually taking a massive pay cut in real terms. By 2018, the minimum wage in Venezuela, when converted to dollars at the black market exchange rate, was about $5 per month, not per hour, per month. Doctors, teachers, professionals who had spent years building careers found themselves unable to afford basic food. Some resorted to mining virtual gold in video games because they could make more doing that than working their actual jobs. The stock market created an illusion that trapped a lot of people. Venezuela's stock market went absolutely vertical during the hyperinflation. Stock prices multiplied by factors of 100, 1,000, even 10,000. Headlines talked about the best performing stock market in the world. But this was pure monetary illusion. When measured in dollars or in real purchasing power, Venezuelan stocks were collapsing. People who thought they were getting rich by staying invested in local stocks were actually watching their wealth evaporate in real terms. The numbers were going up, but the value was going down. This is where smart money starts moving long before the crisis becomes obvious to everyone else. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. By the time inflation hits 100%, 500%, 1,000%, it's too late. The people who protect their wealth do it years earlier, when inflation is still in the 20%, 30%, 40% range, and most people are still in denial. So what does smart money do? First, they diversify out of the local currency immediately. They don't wait. They don't hope it'll get better. The moment they see chronic double-digit inflation combined with government money printing, they move wealth into harder currencies. For Venezuelans, this meant dollars, euros, anything that wasn't bolivars. Third, they shift to real assets that hold value across currencies. Real estate in stable countries, commodities, precious metals, businesses that generate revenue in hard currencies. Fourth, they build offshore holdings. This is about survival. If your entire net worth is trapped in a system that's collapsing, you're going down with it. Smart money diversifies geographically, holding assets in multiple jurisdictions and currencies. Fourth, they develop hard currency income streams. If you're earning money in a collapsing currency, you're on a treadmill to nowhere. Smart money finds ways to earn in stable currencies through remote work, exports, or investments that generate dividends in dollars or euros. Fifth, they acquire practical assets early. In severe collapses, people died because they couldn't access necessities. Those who prepared had food storage, medical supplies, and essentials when stores were empty. Now, here's what's critical to understand. These moves aren't about paranoia, they're about recognizing patterns. You don't wait until the house is burning to have a fire escape plan. The time to act is when you see early warning signs. What are those signs? First, sustained inflation above 10% annually. Not temporary spikes, but chronic structural inflation. Second, government deficits exceeding 5% of GDP consistently. Third, economic controls like price controls, capital controls, currency controls. These are red flags that create black markets and distortions. Fourth, declining foreign currency reserves. If a central bank is burning through dollar reserves defending the currency, the defense is failing. Fifth, brain drain. When doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs emigrate in significant numbers, they're reading the signals. The mass exodus from Venezuela started years before hyperinflation peaked. Here's a case study that perfectly illustrates the difference between trusting the system and protecting yourself. In 2014, when Venezuela's inflation hit 69%, two friends, both engineers, made different choices. One trusted the government's promises that inflation would be controlled. He kept his savings in Bolivar-denominated accounts. He bought Bolivar-denominated bonds that promised high interest rates. He kept his assets local because moving money abroad seemed complicated, and he thought the crisis was exaggerated. The other engineer was more skeptical. He didn't trust the trend line. He opened accounts abroad. He bought U.S. stocks through international brokers. He kept some gold. He even bought a small property in Colombia. His friends thought he was paranoid. Fast forward to 2020. The first engineer's net worth, once worth about $200,000 in real terms, was worth essentially zero. Everything denominated in bolivars had been destroyed. The second engineer's wealth had actually grown. His U.S. stocks did well. His Colombian property appreciated. His gold held value. His offshore dollars were still dollars. Same starting point. Same country. Completely different outcomes. The difference wasn't luck. It was preparation and the willingness to act when others were in denial. Now let's bring this home with practical lessons. First, currency collapse isn't a third world problem. The UK saw hyperinflation in the 1970s, Germany in the 1920s, Argentina repeatedly. The common thread is fiscal mismanagement and loss of trust. Second, diversification across currencies is essential for wealth preservation. If 100% of your wealth is in one currency, you have concentration risk. Third, focus on real wealth, not nominal numbers. Your net worth is meaningless if the currency is losing value. Fourth, financial systems can change rules overnight. Capital controls, bank freezes, currency devaluations happen. Legal diversification protects you. Fifth, build redundancy. Multiple banks, countries, asset types, income streams. Redundancy feels inefficient in normal times, but becomes survival in crisis. Sixth, maintain liquid reserves you can access quickly. Always have cash you can deploy immediately if conditions change. Seventh, sometimes geographic diversification matters. Having residency elsewhere gives you options. Eighth, accept that protection sometimes means missing short-term gains. Sacrificing potential returns for security can save your wealth when systems fail. The warning signs of monetary collapse are visible years before the final crash. Venezuela's financial collapse preceded its broader crisis by years. The signs were clear in 2014, 2015, 2016. The people who protected their wealth did it back then, not later. By the time a system fully collapses, it's too late. You protect wealth during the slow decline, not the final crash. Here's the ultimate truth about trust and money. Trust isn't permanent, It's fragile. The Venezuelan bolivar was a functioning currency for decades until it wasn't. The German mark was trusted before Weimar hyperinflation. The Argentine peso was pegged to the dollar until it wasn't. Every failed currency was once trusted. The people who kept their wealth understood that trust can break, and they prepared for that possibility. If this video changed how you think about currency and wealth, hit that like button and subscribe because we break down financial realities most people ignore until it's too late. Think differently about where your wealth is held, how it's denominated, and what risks you're actually taking. Because in a world where monetary trust can evaporate faster than you think, preparation isn't paranoia. It's financial common sense. I'll see you in the next one.